Heim will join 2311 Racing for 12 NASCAR Cup Series races in 2026, and Tyrrell has won the Kaulig Gong Show and will drive for the team full-time in the Truck Series in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2026 JF Electric Gray Biffle scheme that we'll see this weekend at Daytona. They'll be honoring Gray Biffle this weekend with the Nice Motorsports truck. I gotta say, this truck absolutely looks incredible, and the font they're using absolutely looks amazing as well. I think Nice knocked it out of the park. It looks pretty good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece's 2026 Viva scheme that we'll see in the Daytona 500. Scheme looks really nice in my opinion, a little better than one they had in 2025 for Ryan Preece. It's a different look to the car. Love the colors on it. It's going to be nice to see out on the track this weekend at Daytona. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Joey Logano's 2026 Pennzoil scheme that we'll see later this year at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I love the look of this car. I think that Team Penske absolutely knocked this one out of the park. The colors match very perfectly on this one. It looks really good, and the color grade on this looks good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Bilicki's 2026 Flex Power scheme that we'll see for 2 NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series races in 2026. Scheme looks okay in my opinion. Really excited to see if Flex Power is back working with the organization in 26. Scheme looks alright, but it doesn't look amazing. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2026 Rebel Bourbon scheme that I believe we're going to see at Circuit of the Americas. Scheme looks alright in my opinion. There's going to be a lot of different Rebel Bourbon cars throughout the 2026 year with the partnership they got. It was one of the better Kyle Busch paint schemes revealed so far this year. It does look okay, and the colors look alright. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is William Sawallich's 2026 Sound Gear scheme that we'll see in a lot of NASCAR Rally Auto Parts races in 2026. This one is not the greatest scheme in my opinion, to be honest. I don't think the red and orange match too well on this. I think the black number doesn't look as good in this one compared to other ones. It looks alright, but it's not the best looking car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Travis Pastrana's 2026 Brunt Workwear scheme with the gray Biffle number that we'll see this weekend in the Truck Series race at Daytona. I love the look of this truck. I think it absolutely looks incredible. The orange, everything about this truck looks really good. Nice to see Brunt Workwear on the truck. It does look good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Gio Rogero's 2026 JBL scheme that we'll see in 10 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series races in 2026. Scheme is not as strong as the one he had in 2025. I think it's an alright looking truck, but it definitely could look a little better in my opinion. It's a solid looking one, but not the best JBL scheme we have seen ever. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Berry's 2026 David Pearson Motorcraft Throwback scheme that we'll see in the Daytona 500. This paint scheme is honoring 50 years since David Pearson won the 1976 Daytona 500. I think they absolutely knocked this one out of the park. One of my favorite schemes I've seen for the weekend so far for the Daytona 500. I think it absolutely looks incredible. I think the Woodbirds did a great job. It's a nice looking car. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Andres Perez's 2026 Acceptance Insurance scheme with the gray Biffle number we'll see this weekend at Daytona. This truck looks really awesome in my opinion. I think they actually did a really awesome job for the Nice Motorsports camp. Looks kind of similar to the Ross Chastain paint scheme we saw last year and also scheme that Shane Van Gisbergen had. I think it does look pretty good. It's a nice looking car and truck. Looking forward to on a racetrack this weekend in the Truck Series race at Daytona. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Superfile. As it was announced yesterday or a couple days ago that Superfile will sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen in the 2026 Daytona 500. Superfile is a technology company that has worked, I believe, in Australia for a very long time, and they've had association, I believe, with SVG in the past. I gotta say, this truck looks really, really good. I think his team, without question, knocked this paint scheme out of the park because I think that him having a different company coming into work in the Daytona 500, I think that's amazing and awesome to see. I talked about this on my channel yesterday when I did a video on it. I think the car looks awesome. It's a nice scheme that'll be out there for the Daytona 500. I'm excited to see this car out on the racetrack in this year's Daytona 500 with the 97. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bonanza Wines. As it was announced a couple days ago on Friday that Bonanza Wines will sponsor Cole Custer in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. The first time we're going to see the car will be at Circuit of the Americas, and they're expected to be associate sponsor for the team and program throughout 2026. Bonanza Wines was a sponsor that worked with the organization in the 2025 season at COTA and a few other races throughout the year, and I think it's great to see them be back working with Cole Custer in the 2026 season and working with the Haas factory team as well. I think it's going to be nice to see the paint scheme when it does get revealed. I love seeing new sponsors and older sponsors sticking around and coming in the sport. It's good to see them back in and good to see them be working with Cole Custer in the NASCAR Cup Series once again in 2026. I think the car will probably also look pretty solid as well. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Koofandy. As it was announced on Friday that Koofandy will sponsor Christopher Bell this upcoming May in the NASCAR Cup Series race at Watkins Glen. Koofandy sponsored Christopher Bell last year at Martinsville Speedway in the penultimate race, and they were also an associate sponsor for the team and organization in 2025 as well. Koofandy's worked with a lot of the NASCAR YouTubers and many other big YouTubers as well. They have probably noticed, and they'll be continuing to do that once again in 2026. I think it's going to be good to see this car out on the racetrack. Maybe there'll be a different look to the car. They did not reveal what kind of look they're going to have for the 2026 year, but I think it's exciting to see him back in the sport once again. I think it's going to be great to see it. Looking forward to see what the car will look like, as I think that Joe Gibbs Racing will probably have a solid chance and opportunity to show a really good look for this season, and I'm glad to see we'll be out on the racetrack later this year. Looking forward to see what it will end up looking like here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Super Bowl. Now, multiple NASCAR YouTubers, by the time many of you have seen this video, were featured in Super Bowl commercials. Among those is Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace is featured in a Toyota commercial, I think a 30-second ad that played throughout the Super Bowl, and Bubba got featured in the ad. Also, Jesse Love was associated with the Sam Soares sponsorship. Sam Soares is going to sponsor Jesse Love for a few races in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series in 2026. And I think it's really good that you have two drivers who do have growing fan bases in NASCAR, both getting the chance and opportunity to be front and center in the Daytona for this season, considering the fact that both will be well known. Both of them will probably be well recognized. Bubba will also be well recognized. And I think getting associated with Toyota is a huge deal. I would love to see like Christopher Bell or maybe someone like a Tyler Reddick get also some additions with the Toyota side of things. But I think on the marketing side of things, I think it's great. Bubba is expected to have a pretty big year in the Cup Series. And same thing goes for Jesse Love. So I think it's going to be great to see them in those commercials. Many of you have already seen them at this point, but good to see them on Super Bowl commercials. I love when we see NASCAR drivers get involved with Super Bowl commercials because I think it's good for the sport and a big thing for the sport in general, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about San Diego. As there was reported by Adam Stern on Friday afternoon that tickets are selling quickly for the Cup Series race at Naval Base Coronado in San Diego, and a sellout announcement is close. About 50,000 people, according to Adam Stern, will be allowed on site each single day, and Ben Kennedy also confirmed that's the direction they'll be going as well for the first event on Naval Base Coronado. Obviously, this is a really huge deal. The race at San Diego will be the first NASCAR Cup Series race on a Naval Base era ever, and basically a big reason for that is because it is the 250th anniversary of the country. Now, the race will be the last race of the Amazon broadcast in 2026. And if you're wanting to go to this event, you better make sure you have a ticket set up and ready to go so you can be at this event in the 2026 year. Because I think this is going to be one of the most watched races of 2026. Because one, I do expect the Amazon numbers to go up on the broadcasting and a number of people tuning into that. But I think a lot of people are going to be very interested to see how this race will go because it's the first time we've ever raced on a naval base like this. And I'm going to be excited to see when this does, in fact, end up selling out. Because I think a lot of people are going to be very happy about that when it does get announced as a sellout. Because a lot of people are excited about it. I won't be there, unfortunately, this year for it. Would like to go to one of these bigger events down the road in the future. But nonetheless, really great to see it'll likely be a sellout. I think a lot of people are very happy to hear that when it gets confirmed that they sold out the official event. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Clayton Green. As it was announced a couple days ago that Clayton Green will be returning to Team Heim in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. He'll make 8 starts in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year. This will include at Rockingham Speedway. I think I saw North Wilkesboro at the end of the year as well, and I think I also saw Homestead is another race that Clayton Green is going to do. Now, what's interesting is the fact that Luke Baldwin was supposed to be on the wheel of the number 2 truck for some of those races that Clayton Green is scheduled, because he'll be in the 2 truck for 8 of those races. My best guess is Luke Baldwin might be moving over to the 22 truck for a few races, or someone else has come and picked them up for some of those races in the 2026 year. Clayton Green, I'm not expecting too much from him, to be honest. He really didn't do much in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2025, and I'm just not sure if he's going to show that big improvement going into the 2026 season. Realistically, I think Clayton Green will finish likely outside of the top 30 and not show the pace and speed to be a factor, because while Team Heim, I think, will get a little more support. I've heard rumors that Front Row might be getting more associated over there because Luke Baldwin and Frankie Muniz are driving over there for this season, but I want to see what Clayton Green can do. I hope he can have a good run with the program, but like I said, I'm just not expecting him to be a major factor and serious contender in the 2026 Craftsman Truck season. We'll see if he can perform. Good to see him, though, back with the program, and we'll see if he can do good things with this team in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, many of you probably saw this post on social media from Kyle Busch very recently, but Kyle Busch actually won a couple Legends car races, I believe in Florida, over the last couple of days and through the weekend as well. Kyle Busch, obviously, we know, has not won a lot of NASCAR races as of recently. His last NASCAR sanctioned win came last year at Atlanta Motor Speedway in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. He's on a very long winless streak in the Cup Series, going all the way back to 2023 when he won at Gateway, my hometown track, a little about 3 years ago. And then, of course, his last other win came for trucks. He had a couple wins in 24, but then he only got one win, like I said, in 2025. This is going to be some good momentum for Kyle Busch, though. I know it's a Legends car race. You have a lot of younger drivers in that series, but I think going out there and winning races like this can give someone a really huge confidence booster. And I think that's going to help Kyle Busch in a pretty solid way going into the 2026 year. So I'm glad to see Kyle Busch win. Congratulations to him on winning the Legends car race out in, I think, in Florida, I'm pretty sure. Good to see him win. We'll see if he can actually have a good NASCAR season with his new crew chief, Jim Pullman, in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Connor Zilch. As it was announced during the National Motorsports Press Association Awards that Connor Zilch won the Richard Petty Driver of the Year for 2025 going into 2026. The Richard Petty Driver Award is for the driver who was the best all across NASCAR in all 3 racing series in 2025 in every single year. And Connor Zilch, in my opinion, was probably arguably the best driver. Now, you could also argue Corey Heim might have been arguably a little bit better with his 12 wins, but you could argue those two were deserving of this award. Because for Connor Zilch, you think about how strong he was in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series with 10 wins, including having 18 consecutive top 10s, and put together a phenomenal year. And if not for a fluky championship format that we had in 2025, Connor Zilch more than likely goes out there and wins the championship. So I think that Connor Zilch put together just an amazing season in 2025. And so far, I know it's only one race for the Clash up to this point, but he did look extremely impressive behind the wheel of that car, the number 88. And I think he's going to be in for a really solid season, and we're all going to be in for a really good treat going into 2026, because I expect Connor Zilch to be really fast, be a super big threat, a contender for sure. We'll see how he ends up doing in the 2026 year with Trackhouse, but I think he's going to be in for a good season, and I think he put together a really strong and really good run and deserving of the award from that group. Congratulations to him on winning the Richard Petty Driver Award, a well-earned award in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Patrick Emmerling. As it was announced earlier today that Patrick Emmerling will drive the number 38 for RSS Racing in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series opener at Daytona International Speedway. I think Firma or some other company will be sponsoring Patrick Emmerling in this event. This, I believe, will be the first time that Patrick Emmerling has ever driven a car for RSS Racing. Last year, Patrick Emmerling competed for the SS Greenlight Racing team and organization. A couple years ago, we all know he was a co-owner of the Emmerling Gase Motorsports organization, but he hasn't been with that team in the last couple years. Obviously, Patrick Emerling is more well known for racing on the modified side of things. He competed in the modified event in New Smyrna with the Speed Tour thing that's going on down there currently at the moment right now. They got postponed a little bit because of some weather issues, if I'm not mistaken. But looking at Patrick Emerling, there's a really good opportunity for him. RSS Racing is going to be getting a ton of support from Hendrick Motorsports and the Haas factory team going into 2026. And I think he'll have a competitive car. Plus, Chevrolets generally are really good when it comes to qualifying in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series. So I think Patrick could have a chance and opportunity. Now, 38 car, I don't believe has a ton of owners points going in, so I'm not sure if he will have the best chance to make the field, but if they could bring the pace and speed, he certainly can make it. We'll see what Patrick Emerling can do as he looks to run really competitively and really strong in that number 38 car. We'll see what he can do at Daytona International Speedway in the season opener for the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series if he can, in fact, end up making the show and the field. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Michael Bay. As there was reported by Adam Stern earlier today and earlier this evening that apparently Michael Bay has filed a lawsuit against Kaulig for $1.5 million. A big reason why Michael Bay apparently has filed a lawsuit against Kaulig is because he was supposed to be associated with this ad, I'm pretty sure, for the Super Bowl for this year. And apparently they may have not taken the payment or something like that. And apparently Kaulig has also written their own response as well, kind of going against the claims that Michael Bay has had. But Michael Bay, we all know, is a director, right? And I think it has some association with the Formula One movie as well. As I think Kaulig helped in a pretty big way with the Formula One movie that got released about a year or so ago. And of course, there's talks there could be a second Formula One movie coming out in a sequel in the not-so-distant future. And I think it's kind of crazy. You got Michael Bay getting involved with getting into lawsuits, among other things as well. And I think it's certainly something interesting because I never would have thought we'd see the day where a guy like Michael Bay would be suing someone in the entertainment industry, but here we are at this point. So I think it's certainly interesting. I'm not surprised to see this because sometimes we have people who have a lot of money like Michael Bay does. You're going to see sometimes people do crazy and wild things. And I think what Michael Bay is doing here is no exception. So kind of crazy stuff to see him getting involved in a lawsuit. Not sure if he'll have the grands to stand on for winning. Basically money among other things. Maybe they'll pay the money so they don't have to go to court at this point. We'll see what happens and we'll see how big this gets because I'm not sure this will get bigger than just something that probably could be settled out of court. Won't be surprised if it does get settled out of court here really, really soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jordan Anderson Racing. As it was announced on Friday morning that Jordan Anderson Racing has officially announced the 2026 competition/crew chief lineup for 2026. And there are some changes going into the 2026 NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series season. J.C. Limscheid will be the crew chief for Jeb Burton in 2026, replacing Shane Whitlock, who will be the competition director for the team and program in 2026. Cody McKenzie is once again back crew chief for the number 31 that Blaine Perkins is going to drive in 2026. And Mark Zetzer, I believe, was a crew chief for one of the other drivers at this team and program. He'll be the crew chief of number 32 car for Jordan Anderson Racing. That is going to be driven by a couple different drivers. Raj Kruv is going to make 10 starts with this program in 2026. Jordan Anderson is also expected to make a couple starts in this car at some of the super speedways later this year. And Ross Chastain is going to compete in 4 NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series starts with the team and program in the 2026 year. Obviously, this is very interesting with some of the moves I'm seeing here. I'm a little surprised to see that Shane Whitlock or Mark Zetzer is not going to be the crew chief for Jeb Burton. I think you probably should put your strongest crew chief or your strongest individual with your strongest driver because in my opinion, going into the year, Jeb Burton is the strongest full-time driver. And while I think that Blaine Perkins has shown some promise and potential in the past, I certainly don't see someone like Blaine Perkins being like a championship threat or championship contender, while I think Jeb Burton has a better chance and opportunity to make the chase with this team. But I think nonetheless it's good to see that some people are staying on with the program this year. We'll see what the Jordan Anderson Racing team can do. Because I think this team has some promise and potential. You're going to have some Cup Series drivers running with the team throughout the year. Maybe see Kyle Busch get behind a wheel for a race or two. If they could bring the pace and speed, I think that will be huge. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, good to see that they finally announced the competition director side of things in the competition department for the 2026 NASCAR season. We'll see how things go going into the upcoming year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Rolex 24. as it was reported by Adam Stern on Friday going into Saturday that according to him, IMSA is reporting multiple Rolex 24 records, including 4-day attendance of 180,000 people across all 4 days, meaning there were over 50,000 people who attended the first and second days of the main events for the Rolex 24, which is an attendance record. In addition to that, when it comes to the YouTube side of things, there were 3.8 million views on the Rolex 24 on the international side of things, and the YouTube viewership for the Rolex 24 was really huge. When you look at motorsports across the board in the United States right now that are growing, it's not NASCAR really, it's not IndyCar. Formula One is growing a bit, but I'm expecting Formula One to drop off a bit. The motorsport that's really making the biggest headway currently at the moment is sports car racing in IMSA. IMSA, when you look at their YouTube side, they almost have more subscribers at this point than the NASCAR YouTube channel does, so the NASCAR YouTube channel is continuing to grow. And it's growing faster than the IndyCar channel is, and the only motorsport that's growing more than IMSA is right now is Formula One, but they have more of an international audience than the IMSA side of things has. And you have a lot of people from the ALMS and the ELMS who do tune in as well, and from like the World Darts Championship also, which there is that big crossover that is going on at the moment right now. But I think when you look at the Rolex 24, the ratings were huge. They got over 1 million people across both days, which is up twice of what they got in 2024, which only got 400,000. I think it's for people like David Lane who play a factor in that. He really helps try to grow the sport, which I think many people do appreciate when he helps grow the sport in a big way. I know some disagree with David Lane on some of the things he says, but the guy knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about for the most part, among other things. I just think right now when you look at it, things are growing. I'm excited to see the future of the event for the Rolex. I think it's going to be a huge event long term. I think there's going to be many great things that will come out of the Rolex 24 for many years to come down the road as well. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Dye. On Friday, it was reported by Adam Stern that Daniel Dye was talking about the Truck Series race that will be taking place on the streets of St. Petersburg for the Grand Prix of St. Pete. And it looked like Daniel Dye was calling out the IndyCar race at St. Petersburg a little bit. He says that the Truck Series race will be a more exciting event and will be more fun to watch than the IndyCar race will be at the streets of St. Petersburg. Now, Daniel Dye, of course, is definitely going to be a little bit biased toward the event because, of course, he will be competing full-time in the Craftsman Truck Series with the Kaulig organization in 2026. And I will say this about NASCAR compared to IndyCar racing. When I look at road course racing in particular, while IndyCar racing definitely can be good from time to time, I don't think Daniel Dye is entirely wrong. Look, the thing for me when it comes to IndyCar, their oval racing is really, really amazing, right? And the streets of St. Petersburg can be a fun event. But look at the last couple years. The last couple years for IndyCar, I don't think the racing there, especially at St. Petersburg for that matter, has been the most spectacular. Compare that to NASCAR with the road course racing. While yes, it sometimes can be a little boring at points, the Truck Series can also have some very crazy and exciting things that happened too. So I completely understand what Daniel Dye is saying. I know some of the IndyCar fans are going after him, and I have to kind of say why you're going after him. He does bring up some really good points here. He does have an understandable point about IndyCar not always having the most exciting racing. Now, IndyCar's definitely got better racing than Formula One, but that's not saying much at this point. But what people want from IndyCar is more oval racing. That's what they want. They don't want as many road courses on the schedule. That's one of the reasons why there's so much pushback on the Washington, D.C. event that is taking place. So I get what Daniel Dye is saying. I completely understand it and respect it. I don't think everyone's going to agree with that, and I think that's fine and understandable, but I think Daniel Dye does have a pretty good point on that I think that the event at St. Pete for trucks is probably going to be more exciting than the IndyCar races because right now the racing in IndyCar at these types of tracks is not as strong as the oval racing, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jade Avedissian. Now, many of you probably saw the super late model race that has been going down in the Asphalt World Series down in New Smyrna this week. And Jade Avedissian put together a strong night one. She ended up finishing up front, leading in the late, but she got put on the wall by Spencer Davis and lost her chance to win. Well, night number 2 was night of redemption for Jade Avedissian. She put together an unbelievable and great performance in the World Series of Asphalt down there, got the lead late, and would dominate the majority of the race. And coming out the final corner in her second super late model start, she came out the corner and picked up the win in victory, holding off a lot of really strong competition drivers like William Sawash, among other guys in the field as well. This is a major accomplishment for Jade Avedissian. I am very high on her. When you look at young female drivers coming up in motorsports right now at this point, I would say Jade Avedissian is probably the best driver on the female side that probably has the best chance and opportunity to being super successful in NASCAR. Look what she's done, and also the midget side of things and the role of outlaws and stuff similar to that. She's won races over there. She's been competing in late model races, won some late model races last year, and going out there beating some really strong competition like Keelan among others. That is an amazing accomplishment for her, and I think she deserves a lot of respect for that. And I really hope people do respect her for what she's been able to accomplish as a driver up to this point. I'm really happy for her. Massive congratulations to her on winning the super late model race in New Smyrna. She'll probably win more races down the road. Also, she's going to be part-time for Nitro Motorsports this year. I think she's got a really good chance. If she's running a dirt race later this year, she'll have a really good chance and opportunity with that team and program. So, massive congratulations to her on picking up the win and victory in New Smyrna. A well-deserved and well-earned victory against people like Ryan Preece, among others, who won the Clash recently nonetheless. Congrats to her on winning the super late model race. A well-earned and well-deserved victory for her to get that win and victory in that event. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Charles Leclerc. Now, a couple days ago on Saturday, there was a post that came out from motorsport.com on their Twitter page. And Charles Leclerc is pushing once again to get motorsports in the Olympics in the future. Obviously, right now what's going on is the Winter Olympics. And it seems like every time we have the Olympics going on, whether it's 2024, 2026, 2022, 2021, or 2020, it doesn't even matter. You always get the topic of the Olympics when it comes to that. And I think a lot of people look at some of the events that are going on in the Olympics at this point when it comes to the Summer Olympic side of things. One of those, of course, is I think rollerblading got added not too long ago. Skateboarding, I think, is part of that, I'm pretty sure, as well. And you got other things that are not maybe a little more niche that people may not be as interested in. You compare that to motorsports. And I understand where Charles Leclerc is coming from. Now, I did see someone put up that they had something very similar to that called IROC. And yeah, IROC definitely something that could work. And you still have IROC going on now. Ray Abraham brought that back recently, brought the naming rights not too long ago, and they're having those vintage events. But you don't really have an IROC series that is going on currently at the moment right now. And I think it'd be really cool every once in a while, maybe down the road, maybe like once in the near future, that maybe motorsports gets a chance to be part of the Olympics. I would think it would be a huge deal. Now, what drivers could represent the Olympics? Obviously, for the United States, you probably have to put Kyle Larson in there, in my opinion. But you would also probably have to put a young driver. And Connor Zilisch would be the driver that represent. But could you get a guy like Chase Elliott? Could you get a guy like Bubba Wallace, perhaps? I think that would certainly be interesting if they could go that direction if they were to have the Olympics. And because I think you need NASCAR drivers associated with that. Just like for France, you would probably end up getting Charles Leclerc, maybe Esteban Ocon. For the UK, you probably get Lewis Hamilton, maybe George Russell or Lando Norris. Then, of course, in Australia, or New Zealand for that matter, get Shane Van Gisbergen, maybe Scott McLaughlin as well for New Zealand. And I think you get a lot of different drivers from other motorsports to get the chance and opportunity to do something like this. I think it'd be great if something like that could happen in the near future. Is that going to happen? I'm not sure at this point. Nonetheless, I think it'd be pretty interesting if it could happen, and we'll see down the road if we see motorsports in the Olympics, because I think it could be a really huge deal if they somehow find a way to end up getting in the Olympics in the near and the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK and Kaulig Racing. Now, we kind of talked about the story on the channel not too long ago, but both RFK Racing and Kaulig Racing will be honoring Greg Biffle at the 2026 Daytona 500. Brad Keselowski pending his approval for the Daytona 500. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Chris Buescher, Ryan Preece, Corey LaJoie, and AJ Allmendinger will all be driving numbers associated with Greg Biffle and the number fonts that they use as well. Obviously, AJ Allmendinger drives the number 16 Kaulig Cup car. We've already seen the Celsius paint scheme reveal for that. I got to say that Celsius car looks phenomenal, and the Greg Biffle throwback numbers and font they've got on there, I think it actually does look really awesome and really, really great. And then, of course, you do have the RFK cars. And, of course, Greg Biffle had a ton of success at RFK Racing. Won the Craftsman Truck Championship for the team in 2000. Won the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series Championship in 2002. And nearly became the first driver in NASCAR history to win championships in all three series. I think that it's amazing what they're doing with this, and I think it's going to be phenomenal to see all this stuff on the racetrack in 2026. And I think you got a lot of honoring that's going to be happening. It was huge to see that 60 car in victory lane with Ryan Preece, considering Greg Biffle was associated with that number when he won the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series Championship. I'm looking forward to see those on the track. I think they all look really solid, and I think they all look really good. It'll be exciting to see that stuff on the racetrack in 2026. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the CW. As there was a report by Adam Stern yesterday that the CW will introduce the CW Sports Bar, the 20 NASCAR weekends in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026. This will be on the midway throughout the 2026 season at many tracks. This means that in 20 of the 33 or 34 NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series races, they will have that on there, which means I think you will have them at the racetrack for most races in the 2026 year. One thing about the CW is they're going all in. Now, there are some things they do need to work on. Number one, they need to find a way to fix some of the issues with affiliate markets. There's been an issue with people in certain affiliates, like Detroit's had issues, I think. Atlanta, I believe, is another area that's had issues with getting the race. And I think areas like Nashville and other parts of the country have had issues finding a way to watch the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series events. But the one thing I really love about the CW is, one, yes, they've had some of the remote broadcasts, but generally the broadcasts do feel really, really good and are really fun to watch. You compare that to other broadcasts, like Fox Sports, for example. And this is no disrespect to Fox, but their truck broadcasts, for example, they feel dated. They don't feel good. Now, they've made some changes bringing Eric Brennan and Brent Stober in, which I think are positive changes over Jamie Little, but I think there's a lot that needs to be done with Fox. When you look at CW, yes, they have the remote broadcast, but their broadcasts just feel better. Now, NASCAR Productions is one thing to point out. They're the ones that are really running the production at this point. So that is a big factor that's really helping make those broadcasts feel pretty good and really, really solid. And I think for the CW, they're continuing to do a lot of positive things and things that I do really like. So I really hope they continue doing those great things, making the best broadcasts they can. I really hope we continue seeing great broadcasts in the near and not so distant future for the sport. But having the CW and their presence at the track a lot more as well, I think is a really awesome and really solid deal. So I'm very happy about that. I love seeing they'll have more presence in the sport once again in the 2026 year. It'll be good to see that presence in the sport of NASCAR in 2026 in the O'Reilly Series, and we'll see them more at the racetrack, it looks like, for the upcoming season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brent Cruz. Now, Brent Cruz in 2026 will be pretty much full-time with Joe Gibbs Racing in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026. And it seems like there's a lot of people in the industry that are really praising Brent Cruz going into the year. Among those is Brian Keselowski, who is a spotter in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and I also believe is doing some spotting in the Cup Series also this year. And it seems like many like him are very excited, saying that he thinks that Brent Cruz could have a season very similar to what Connor Zilisch had in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series in 2025. Keep in mind, in 2025, Connor Zilisch had a 10-win season. That's a big reason why he got the Richard Petty Driver Award, is because he had a dominant season in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series last year and had 18 consecutive top fives at one point. I am pretty high on Brent Cruz. In my opinion, when we look at the young Toyota pipeline coming up currently at the moment, we have Corey Heim, who in my opinion is probably the most talented Toyota driver currently at the moment, who just had a 12-win season in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and despite that will not have a full-time ride in NASCAR Cup competition, albeit could be a full-time driver in 2027 in the near future. But I think Brent Cruz is number 2. And I think that Brent Cruz is going to be in for a really good season. I think he will get a couple wins minimum. I think 3 to 4 wins is going to be one of the early goals for him going into the year because he's driving the same car that won the Owners' Championship. But I think he's going to be in for a really strong season. Expectations are really high. I don't think he'll get 10 wins. I think that's going to be difficult to match. Very few drivers get even more than 5 or 6 as a rookie. But I think Brent could be in for a really strong year. And I think it's huge praise coming from someone who's worked in the industry for a very long time and for many, many years as well. And I just think Brent Cruz, he's really good. We saw it with Tricon Garage last year where he just looked absolutely phenomenal with Tricon. He had some really strong runs, had a top 5 run going in North Wilkesboro before getting taken out. He had a chance to win Martinsville. had a really strong chance to win the finale at Phoenix, was really good at the Roval. He should have won the roll for that caution came out for Tony Breidinger at the end of the race. I think Brent Cruz, there's a lot of upside with him going into the year. I think he's going to be in for a fantastic and really good season. I think he put together a strong and phenomenal year with this team and program, and I think he'll do a really great job. And I think it's going to be a fun year for him this year. I expect Brent Cruz to show some impressive speed and show really good things with the Joe Gibbs Racing team in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about qualifying for the Daytona 500 and new rules for the qualifying for the Cup Series in 2026. As there was initially reported by Bob Pockers and other reporters in the industry that it looks like that qualifying, there's been some changes in there. They said that you cannot redirect the air with your hand and fingers during qualifying attempt for any NASCAR Cup Series race in 2026. If you do that, your time will end up being disallowed and you will be starting at the back of the field. You won't be going to the rear. You'll just have your time disallowed and will not count toward it. This could be really big even for open cars, especially for this year's 500. You got 7 or 8 cars that are attempting to qualify for the Daytona 500 in 2026. Among those, Corey LaJoie, Chandler Smith, Justin Allgaier, among other big names as well. And Corey Heim, too, who will be attempting to qualify for the 500. This can go in effect for all those guys. Now, obviously, the charter teams, this really won't have too big of an effect, which it might have a big effect, so they'll be able to make the show. But it could have a big effect because we know one of the big things with this next-gen car, it is super and really difficult to pass with the next-gen car. And I think that's one thing here that could be a really big factor. Obviously, NASCAR feels like messing with the window nets and messing with that. If you mess with those could give a huge aero advantage. And we saw that. We've seen that especially, right? I mean, I remember the penalty a couple years ago in 2024 when Joey Logano, who won the pole for the Daytona 500 2 years ago, got penalized for a web glove during qualifying attempt for the race at Atlanta, and he got penalized for that and handed a pretty solid. We didn't get handed a big penalty. We got handed a penalty in the race, but it really wasn't a penalty because the time he went down pit road, a caution would come out for a big wreck at Atlanta, one of the greatest races in NASCAR Cup history. But when I think about this could be something to watch out for, and I think this certainly is going to be a big story. I think there will be a time that will be disallowed, and I think that could be big for the open cars. That could be big for other cars as well. So I'm very interested to see how things are going to go on that front for qualifying, because I think you're going to have someone that's going to get in trouble for this, because I think someone is going to try to play the gray area. They're going to try to go through the gray area and mess with that stuff. And I think that someone is probably, unfortunately, going to end up getting in trouble because they mess with something like this. So it'll be a story to watch out for throughout the Daytona Speed Weeks, and we'll see if someone messes with that. We might see someone get their time disallowed because they mess with that part that they're not allowed to mess with, and I think that'll be something that could be a storyline in the Daytona 500 qualifying in 2026. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sam Mayer. Now, Sam Mayer, reminder, was supposed to test at Rockingham Speedway a couple days ago on Friday. Well, apparently Sam Mayer was not at the test at Rockingham Speedway, and Sheldon Creed will drive the 00 car for the Haas factory team once again in 2026. He was the guy who was driving the number 41 car at the test. This is honestly kind of a really big deal. Now, why was Sam Mayer not testing? Well, according to reports from the Haas factory team, apparently Sam Mayer had his wisdom teeth removed, I believe, just a few days prior, and had to remove about a week before the opening race of the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race in 2026. I feel like this is a story that people should definitely be talking about, because I feel like it's probably not the smartest idea, and it's probably not wise to get your wisdom teeth removed probably less than 2 weeks prior to an event at Daytona. Now, obviously, that might have been the only time that could have been scheduled because he did have a lot going on. I think he had some testing that happened throughout the offseason. But in all honesty, in all seriousness, this is something that might need to be paying attention to, because when you look at Sam Mayer, he's already missed the season finale. Reminder, he got suspended after Martinsville after intentionally wrecking a driver after the race. I think it was Jeb Burton, I'm pretty sure, after the race was over, and got suspended at Phoenix. So could he miss the first 2 races, back-to-back events, after being so consistent last year? And could that affect him early in the year because of concentration, among other things as well? The one thing I would say, though, is there's a good chance and possibility that this will probably become a non-story in the near future, because I think Sam Mayer is one of those guys that could be in for a great season. And obviously is one guy who also in the near future wants to be a NASCAR Cup Series guy. Having a setback like this at start the year, and having wisdom teeth surgery this close to the start of the year, I just feel like this is a very questionable time to make a move like this. And I hate that for Sam that they had to announce that they were doing this at this point, because it's like, why are you having wisdom teeth surgery? Because it sometimes takes a little bit of time. I would imagine I'll have a checkup later this week, and I imagine I'll probably have someone on standby and on backup just in case, because something like this, you're probably going to want to have a backup driver ready to go just in case you're not having issues and potential complications that could really come into play in the near future. So a big story potentially down the road to look at when it comes to Sam Mayer, because again, I expect Sam Mayer to have a pretty good year with the Haas factory team. They're probably going to be quicker. He's probably going to continue that consistency train that he showed in 2025, where he was one of the most consistent guys throughout the year. I think he's going to have a potential good season, but this is definitely a little bit of a setback, and it could definitely be a really big setback for Sam Mayer going into 2026, as I think this is something that could have a little bit of an effect on him in the start of the year in 2026, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Cletus McFarland. Now, we all thought that Cletus McFarland would be having his main test to make sure he was approved to run the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series opener at Daytona later this week. Well, it turns out that test was not last week, because Parker Eatman drove one of the trucks, and I believe Landon Lewis and a couple other drivers got behind the wheel of the 42 and the number 45 trucks at Rockingham Speedway. So a lot of us were thinking, well, when is Cletus McFarland testing his truck for the opener at Daytona? Well, according to reports and Bob Pockris and others as well, Cletus McFarland's test will be taking place tomorrow at Rockingham Speedway. He'll be driving number 4 truck in that test. Now, many people do think that Cletus McFarland is going to end up getting approved to run the Craftsman Truck Series opener at Daytona, because he does have prior experience racing in the ARCA Menard Series at Daytona. He did, of course, do the test recently as well with Rhett Jones Racing, and on top of that as well, he will be also on track during practice for the ARCA race, as he'll be driving the 30 car for Rhett Jones Racing in the opener, and he's also going to make a few other starts as well. In addition to that, Cletus McFarland is driving at a track, like I said, that has familiarity with. And I think this could be a race maybe in the future that he ends up doing, because if you're testing at Rockingham, you might be looking to run it. And that could be definitely a big challenge if Cletus ends up running. Now, once it does get confirmed whether Cletus is approved or not approved to run we'll probably talk about it here on the channel. But obviously, it's a really big deal, because you have a lot of really big names that are running the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series event at the race at Daytona. We've already talked about it. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is driving a 45 for Nice. You got Travis Pastrana driving a 42 truck for Nice Motorsports. You got Michael McDowell driving a 7 truck for Spire Motorsports. You got Carson Osbar making his first of 13 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series starts this year, as he'll drive the number 77 truck. You've got Tony Stewart making his first NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series start in 21 years, or nearly 21 years, at Daytona in the 25 truck for Kaulig Racing. And on top of that, you've got Brendan Butterbean Queen and Justin Haley. And you got other big names in this race. Corey LaJoie is driving a 75 truck for Henderson Motorsports. The Henderson Motorsports team is the defending winners at the race at Daytona. And we don't know who's driving the 1 truck at this point at Daytona. You got the 62 truck being driven by John Hunter Nemechek. And there's other big names that haven't been announced at this point that I would imagine might get behind the wheel. I think this Truck Series race on Friday night, about 4 nights from now, is going to be a really huge event. And I think a lot of people definitely, with that question, are going to be tuning in. And again, I'm very interested to see what the remainder of the schedule is going to be for Cletus, because rumors are that Cletus McFarland is looking to make a ton of starts in the Truck Series this year. He's looking to maybe make 4 or 5 starts potentially. He's looking at running Talladega. I don't know about Atlanta at this point. I'm not sure that's going to be on the schedule to drive the 4 truck this year. I've heard Kyle Busch and maybe another driver by the name of Connor Hall might be getting behind the wheel of that truck throughout the year. But maybe they want to have someone like Cletus with experience. And I think the ratings for those races are probably going to be good too, because I think Cletus is going to bring a lot of eyes on the sport. It'd be crazy if he did go out and win the truck race at Daytona. Nonetheless, the test is coming up really soon. It's going to be a really huge test to see if he's approved or not. I would imagine Cletus will likely be approved and good to go to run the event. So I think it will be good enough, and we'll have a good enough test to make it in the event coming up at the race at Daytona very, very soon. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Keselowski. Now, we all thought Brad Keselowski's test to be approved for the 2026 Daytona 500 and to be approved for the 2026 NASCAR season. We thought that test would be taking place and have already taken place at this point. Well, due to weather, Brad Keselowski revealed that his test to make sure he is approved to run the Daytona 500 in 2026 has still not officially happened at this point. But a test by the time many of you are watching this video will likely have ended up taking place. We also found out last week as well that Brad Keselowski did not have a valid NASCAR license at that particular point in particular moment. And likely by now, by the time many of you are watching this, he probably would have already gotten that valid NASCAR license at this particular time. But for Brad Keselowski, obviously, he has to have this test. There's a medical test they are going to have to make sure he is good to go. This test is to determine if Brad Keselowski will be good enough and be ready to run the 2026 Daytona 500. Because Brad Keselowski, we all know, of course, unfortunately had an injury not too long ago when he was skiing and actually getting out of his car to go skiing at the event at Daytona, as basically skiing and was getting out of his car and had an unfortunate femur injury that took place as he was getting out of his car. He said that was one of the most painful injuries that he has had. He's saying he is standing up and he's walking a little bit better at this point, and he's been really pushing himself and getting the physical therapy to be ready for the Daytona 500 in 2026. Very likely at this point, if he does pass the physicals, he will be good to go and will start the season. My big question for Brad Keselowski, even if he is approved, will he have a backup driver just in case? I'd imagine they're looking at someone at this point to get behind the wheel. The problem is the two likely backup drivers, Chandler Smith and Corey LaJoie, are attempting to qualify for the Daytona 500. Corey LaJoie is driving a Ford RFK racing machine, the number 99 car, and you have Chandler Smith who's driving the number 36. So then you have to look at who else is available. I look at Lane Riggs. Lane Riggs is someone who wants to race in the NASCAR Cup Series right now. He's been certainly interested and wanting to get behind the wheel, and I think he is right now the odds-on favorite more than likely to get behind the wheel of a car if Brad Keselowski doesn't get the chance to race in the 500 this year. And then Brad will have to wait until he gets going. This is one of the things I'm worried about with Brad going into the year. I know there's a lot of people who have already predicted Brad Keselowski to make the NASCAR Cup Series chase in 2026. And I do understand that logic because Brad Keselowski was super consistent at the end of the year after struggling start. But 2025, that number 6 car got a lot stronger, and it certainly did get a lot faster. But the thing about Brad Keselowski is, and I know he had an injury, and we all know he was really good after the injury in 2011 when he got injured in a test at Road Atlanta. Here's the thing, though. Brad Keselowski then was 27 years old. Brad Keselowski now is 41 and will turn 42 very, very soon. It takes a little bit longer for someone to heal that's in their early 40s than is someone in their upper to their mid to upper 20s. It's going to take a little bit longer time for that healing process to end up taking place. So I think that's one reason why when you look at this, I'm not sure Brad Keselowski is going to make the chase. That's why I have Brad Keselowski not making it and Kyle Busch making it, because I have a little more confidence in Kyle Busch, especially with the new crew chief going into this season. But I think for Brad, I think he gets through this test with no issues and no problems, and I think he will end up, without question, being approved to run the 2026 Daytona 500. Again, I would more than likely expect that Brad is going to have a backup driver to make sure he is good enough to go, and I think he will be fine to run the 500. We have to wait and see how the test goes. Once we do get confirmation on how that test went, we'll likely talk about it on the channel. It's a test where the media will also not be available to enter as well. It's a private test going on, and again, don't expect a lot of the media to be able to be out there, as that will be a test for doctors to make sure Brad Keselowski can be medically and good to go to run the Daytona 500 at this point. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Minnie Tyrrell. Now, Minnie Tyrrell was the driver who won the Kaulig Ram Racer to See and the Kaulig Gong Show. With him winning the Racer to See and the Kaulig Gong Show, it was confirmed that he'll be driving full-time for Kaulig Racing in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. He will drive the number 14 truck in the upcoming year and season. Bruce Cook, we already know, will be the crew chief for him also in the Craftsman Truck Series in this upcoming season. I've already kind of noticed at this point more than likely that Mini Tyrrell was likely going to win. I think this was the worst kept secret in the industry for the last couple months, was who ended up winning the Ram Racer to see. I think there were a lot of big indications that he was going to win. Number one of the big indications is the fact that Bruce Cook, who is a crew chief over at Kaulig Racing in the Truck Series this year, he of course is a crew chief on that truck, and of course Mini Tyrrell will be driving the number 17 truck car in the ARCA race coming up very, very soon at the event at Daytona on Saturday, the night before, after the race ends up taking place for the Craftsman Truck Series. The other thing, a lot of other drivers were announcing their plans. Lennon Huffman, who was one of the favorites, ended up, of course, going over back full-time on the Cars Tour this year, and other names in the series like Tanner Rife, among other names, announced their intentions of running other different series in 2026. And with other big names announced, I felt like, okay, Mini Tyrrell was going to end up winning. That doesn't mean, though, Mini Tyrrell hasn't earned this opportunity. Mini Tyrrell is a really, really talented young race car driver. He is only 24 years old currently at the moment. So he's technically he's actually the youngest full-time driver in that organization going into the year. You have Brendan Butterman Queen, who is about 30 years old at this point. You have Justin Haley, who is turning, I believe, 27 this year. You have Daniel Dye, who's actually around the same age as Mini Tyrrell, except he's a little bit older. I think that Daniel Dye was late 2003, early 2004. And they have Mini Tyrrell, who is only 21 going into the start of the year. You have four really young and very hungry drivers. And Mini Tyrrell getting this chance and opportunity is really incredible. Before continuing on, there's another little bit of tidbit from this story. Carson Ferguson, who won the competition, the South Boston thing happened, he will get to race at Martinsville in the number 25 truck for the Kaulig team in the free agent truck at Martinsville, and will be in that 25 with Alex Jones as a crew chief. He ended up winning the $50,000 and got an opportunity to race. That's what I love about the Kaulig show a little bit, is the fact that a young driver like Carson Ferguson, who's really young at this point, is getting a chance and opportunity to make his truck series debut. He's a dirt racer, a modified racer, who he's in a lot of different forms of racing. He finished, I think, second or third across the board in this event, and he did a phenomenal and really good job, and I'm glad to see someone else is getting an opportunity to race for the team. But going back to Mini Tyrrell, he's won some Cars Tour races, 5 career wins in the Cars Tour series. He's won a lot of big events across the board, all in motorsports, and I think it's amazing to see him get the chance and opportunity to race for the Kaulig team this year. Now, what are my realistic expectations? One, I think Mini Tyrrell's talented. I don't think he is going to win this year. I think he's going to be competitive, but I think it's going to take time for the Ram program to be super competitive. I think his teammate Brendan Butterbean Queen will score a victory this season. I have more confidence in Brendan than I do Mini going into the year. I think also Justin Haley will score a victory in the Craftsman Truck Series. I think Justin Haley gets his win, likely not at a super speedway. I think his win will likely end up coming actually at a road course, because I think while Justin Haley has struggled in the Cup Series at road courses, I've seen what it can do with Kaulig Racing in particular. And I think Kaulig Racing, along with their super speedway prowess, they're going to put a lot of emphasis and a lot of focus on their Truck Series road course program, because there's going to be 4 Truck Series road course races this year. I look for Justin Haley to go to victory lane. But I think for Mini Tyrrell, it's a great opportunity, and I think, again, he will do a really solid and really good job, because he had to earn this. He almost quit his racing career not too long ago, and he's back, and I think he's earned this opportunity with this team. Now, looking at the other side of things, I do want to talk about the Kaulig show real quick. I talked about this a little bit in my video. I think there were some things about the show that I thought were really good and some entertainment factors, but I think the biggest thing is the rollout of the show. If they are going to continue doing the show going into 2027, which it sounds like they're in the talks and discussions to have a second year of the show, they can't wait as long as they did to do the season, because especially with drivers announcing their intentions who were driving for the team in the event and have announced their intentions to run in other different series, you kind of already were guessing, and it was already leaked about a month or so ago, who was going to end up winning that show. I feel like that you have to, in the future, if you're going to continue doing something like this, one, don't wait till the last week of January and wait till 2 or 3 weeks before the start of the season ends up taking place. That show should have started the first week of January, or end of December for that matter. That could have been something they did right after Christmas and could have done on the first day of January. And then you would have had a little more time to hype up Mini, and you could have made this show a little bit bigger, because you waited so long to get the show going. You had a lot of people like myself that were frustrated with the way they were doing things. But I think the guy who won it, the rifle winner, in my opinion, he did a phenomenal and great job. Didn't do anything wrong. He's going to be fun to watch this year with Kaulig. I think that 14 truck will have some good pace and speed. He'll finish top 15 to top 20 in the standings for sure. Going to have a chance to make the playoff chase. We'll see what happens with Mini. Congratulations, him. They did some things wrong with the show, but I'm glad to see someone who earned the right opportunity. We'll see what he can do in the truck series with this team and program in 2026. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Heim. Now, I did a video talk about this story on the channel a couple days back on Friday, but Corey Heim's schedule for the NASCAR Cup Series has finally been officially announced for 2026. He will join 23XI Racing for 12 NASCAR Cup Series events in the 2026 season. These events will include the Daytona 500, the Coca-Cola 600, the Brickyard 400, the season finale at Homestead Miami Speedway, the Southern 500, Watkins Glen in May, I think San Diego also as well. He will also run at Chicagoland. He will also run at the Summer Daytona race as well, and many of the other big events like the Southern 500 as well, he will enter. Corey Heim's crew chief will be Booty Barker, who was a crew chief for Bubba Wallace a couple years back. He also was a crew chief for Corey Heim last year in a few events that he ran in the NASCAR Cup Series. First of all, I am very happy to see that Corey Heim is back with 23XI Racing for select races this year. But at the same time, I am disappointed to see that he will not be racing full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2026. A big reason why Corey Heim is not full-time currently at the moment in the NASCAR Cup Series is sponsorship and funding. That's one of the reasons why Nick Sanchez doesn't have a ride, even though he's been rumored to teams like AM Racing for the season, is because of sponsorship and funding is a major factor and a major reason why that has not happened at this point. But I really wish sponsorship and funding didn't matter because this is no disrespect to Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst, he has some talent. But his rookie season last year and any other thing, and if he didn't have money, he would not be in that ride for another year. He finished 35th in full-time points, had only one or two top 15 finishes all year. His best finish all year was 15th. Keep in mind, Cody Ware, who granted had a worse season than Riley Herbst, he basically had a better finish, a best finish, than Riley Herbst had in 2025. He just did not perform very, very well. And we need to see that improvement from Riley Herbst because you look at Corey Heim. In the races he ran last year in the NASCAR Cup Series, he outperformed Riley Herbst in every single race he entered except Chicago, where he unfortunately failed to qualify for that event after a fluky situation off the corner and getting into the outside wall. But when I look at Heim going into the year, what are the expectations for Heim and his opportunities with this team and with this program? One, I think the goal is to gain more experience in Cup competition. While yes, he has been extremely dominant in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series the last couple years, which by the way, he will make some select starts with Tricon Garage in the Truck Series this upcoming year. I do think that the Truck Series is not as competitive as a Cup Series is going to be. But I think that he will be a big contender in some events. He's a good road course racer. He got multiple Truck Series road course wins. I think the goal is top 10s and top 15s at the road courses. In addition to that, he will be a top 10, top 15 factor most weeks, in my opinion. I think he's going to outperform Riley Herbst in a really big way. And if he does well enough, and let's say gets a win, could they replace him in the middle of the year? They probably can't do that because you have to look at the sponsorship aspect and the funding aspect. And unfortunately for Corey Heim, he doesn't have the funding and sponsorship like Riley Herbst does currently at this particular moment in point. But looking at the expectations for Heim in the truck races, he's probably going to win a truck race or two. I have winning 2 Truck Series races this year. I think he's going to enter a bunch of events. He's going to probably win Atlanta. He's going to enter Atlanta next week. And I think he'll be a factor there. So this leads to 2027 for Corey Heim. Could he take over one of the rides? Because all 3 drivers going into the year are free agents in the NASCAR Cup Series. Beginning with Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick right now, I think it's hit or miss what's going to happen with him. I think more than likely what happens, he probably ends up staying with 23XI Racing. But if a team like Hendrick Motorsports is calling you, you probably take that opportunity. Or Spire Motorsports could be looking at him because I think Spire Motorsports is an ascending team. And Spire Motorsports, they do have the cash, and they do have the funding, and they do have the pockets as well. Why they signed Carson Osabar to a contract through the 2030s. But I think more than likely Tyler Reddick, he's not going to go anywhere. I think he ends up staying over 23XI. Then you have Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace, in my opinion, had a really, really strong year last year. Yes, his average finish was worse than the prior season, but he led the most laps he led in a single year, had the most top 5s he's had in a single year, had the most top 10s he's had in a year, and picked up his first win since 2022 when he won the Brickyard 400 last year. And in my opinion, most weeks, he had top 5 to top 10 speed. And I expect that to continue for Bubba Wallace going into 2026. So that leads us to Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst, yes, one thing that will help him is the fact that he does bring sponsorship and he does bring funding to the table. But we have got to see improvement. Even Denny Hamlin said during the press conference, during the clash, I think it was on Wednesday before everyone got on track, he said they need to see improvement from Riley Herbst. They think he will finish top 10, top 15 a lot of weeks. While I do appreciate Denny Hamlin having a little bit of faith in Riley Herbst going into the year, I don't have that big of faith going into this season for Riley Herbst. I just really don't, unfortunately. And it's a shame because I have nothing against Riley Herbst. I know it seems like I do a lot, but I have nothing against Riley Herbst. But here's the problem. We have not seen the major improvement from Riley Herbst that we really need to see. And we need to see that going into the year because he didn't get better. He got worse throughout the year. And it needs to happen this season because he may lose his ride and lose the opportunity to race in NASCAR in the near not-so-distant future if he doesn't get this checked up and figured out here very, very soon. So we'll see what Riley Herbst can do. But for Corey, it's a great opportunity. I also would not be surprised if you see him in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026 as well, potentially with Sam Hunt Racing. I talked about it in my video previewing the O'Reilly lineup for the year. There is a potential we could see a third potential car for Sam Hunt Racing this year, so who knows what will happen there. The 84 is the number I did see on the potential portal that we could see for the year. Who knows? Nonetheless, I'm happy for Corey Heim. I'm glad to see he has a ride with 2311. He should be full-time in the sport, but I digress. We'll see what happens in Heim. I hope he can be full-time in the series in the future, and I think he deserves to be full-time in the series going into 26, in my opinion. So, that's for today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel with notifications on so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What are thoughts about Corey Heim being with 2011 at least on a part-time basis? Do you think he'll be a championship contender this year or not? Let me or at least contender to win races and cup. Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are thoughts on Mini Tyrrell winning the Kaulig Gong Show? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. There's probably going to be some NASCAR news videos dropping throughout the day. We probably will get some news on Monday, potentially about Brad Keselowski's test. Tuesday, we might have the video on the Cletus test, and we're also going to have Truck Series race, O'Reilly Auto Parts race picks. You're also going to see the Truck Series race picks for Daytona coming later today as well. Wednesday will be Daytona 500 race picks, and maybe a NASCAR news video. Might push that to Thursday potentially, and there might be a lot of content dropping this week. Expecting a lot of big videos to drop throughout the week. We're going to have reactions to Daytona 500 qualifying coming very soon as well. Got a lot of content coming on people like Haley Deegan, Shaman Gisberg, and Carl Roberts, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Sheldon Chris, Sam Ayer, Frankie Muniz, Cletus, Fawn Dodger, and Brad Keselowski, Eric Almirola, Chandler Smith, Connor Zilch, Junior Motorsports, Daniel Suarez, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, you name it, Tony Stewart, Case Kane, all the good stuff. Robbie Gordon, we'll talk about it on the channel in the coming days and weeks, so all around great Biff and Brian Vickers too. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.